Hello guys, welcome to the next session of Java 8 features. In this session we are going to understand one of the most important features which was added in a Java 8, that is default and static methods in a Java interface. So with the help of these default and static methods in an interface, we can provide a body to a method as well. So previously we have seen that the interface can contain only the abstract methods, but after the Java 8, with the help of these default and static methods, we can provide body to a Java interface as well, Java interface methods as well. So now in this session we are going to understand three most important questions. So very first thing that we are going to see is how we can add these default and static methods in an interface, and what is the difference between these default and static. Then we are going to understand what is the exact scenario where this particular feature will be useful to you, why this feature is so much important, and lastly we are going to understand now if we can add body to a method in a Java interface as well, then what is the exact difference between this interface and abstract class, because now after adding this particular feature, both of these terms like interface and abstract class might look pretty similar, but there is one small difference, so we are going to understand that difference as well. So without wasting much more time, let me just quickly add one interface inside my package, that is that is com.youtube.java. So let me add one interface and let me just give the name as student to this interface. So you can give any name again over here. Now previously we have seen that in an interface we can have the variables and methods, but variable will be by default public, static and final, and the method will be by default abstract method. So if you even do not specifically mention these abstract method, but it will be by default abstract. So let me quickly tell you what I'm trying to say over here. So let me just add one variable. So let me just give this variable as school name is equals to, and let me just give the name as xyz. Now over here I haven't mentioned this public static final, but even if I haven't mentioned this public static final keywords, but still this school name is public static final by default. So let me just add public static and final keywords. So if you want to add these keywords you can add, otherwise you can avoid, but the school name will be always public static and final by default. Now similarly we can add the method. So let me just add void print student data. So this is the method that I'm going to add. Now this method is by default abstract, no matter whether you specify it specifically like abstract method, but print student data will be always abstract method. Now this is the normal interface that we can use, but after the Java 8 onwards we can add method body as well. So before adding these default and static methods, let me quickly create one class which will implement these student interface. So let me again add new Java class and let me just make this as student IMPL like this. Now student IMPL is going to implement student interface, so let me just give it as student interface. Now we are getting one error over here. So this error basically says that this student IMPL must be declared as abstract, or student IMPL must provide body to the abstract method which is present in a student interface. So if we just go to this student interface, we have an abstract method that is print student data. So student IMPL must have to provide or override this print student data method. So let me just hover on this error. Over here you will get one option that is implement method. Let me just select this and let me just select the method, click OK. Now over here this print student data method is overridden, so we can just give body, like whatever body we want we can just give this body. So I'm just going to give one simple message like this is print student data method. So this is the normal message that I want to give. Now what I'm going to do is, next step, I'm going to add one more class which will be a runner class, so that it will be very easy to understand these particular concepts. So let me just quickly add one class and let me just give the name as runner like this, and this runner class basically contains the will contain the main method. So let me add the main method, and now we can run this particular class as this class contains the main method. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create object of this student IMPL, and then we will see the next part after this. So let me just create one object, that is student IMPL. Let me just give the name as student IMPL itself is equals to new student IMPL, and now we can call the method print student data. So let me just save this and let me just try to run this particular code, and let's see what we get on the terminal. So over here I'm expecting that it should print the message like this is the print student data method. So now everything is fine till this. Now let's try to understand how we can add these default and static methods first, and then we will understand its need as well. So to add the method body, we have the two options. First option is default method and second option is static method. So let's try to understand first of all default. So to do this, we have to use the keyword that is default, and then we have to give the return type, let's say void, and then we have to give the method name, let's say print method. And now over here, if you just see, if I just end this method with a semicolon, so it will give me the error, and this error will say that this particular print method must have the body. So we must have to provide the body to this print method. Now let me just give this curly brackets and let me just try to give the body to this print method. So let me just give the body like hi, I am from interface, and let me just give it as default method so that it will be better to understand. So now this particular message is getting we have to just print this particular message. You can just give any message that you want. Now this print method, how we can use in our student IMPL, this is the most important question, right? So what we can do is, this print method is going to be present into this student IMPL, because we have already seen that when we were discussing about the parent and child relationship, all the parent properties will come into this child class. So automatically this print method is going to be present into this student IMPL. So now if you just go to this runner class and if you just try to use student IMPL dot, then you will see this print method is also accessible with the help of this student IMPL. So the reason behind this is student IMPL is implementing the student. So that means all the properties which are present into the student interface are automatically will come into this student IMPL. So now let me just try to execute this particular class. Let's see what happens, what the message that we get. So if you see on the terminal, we are getting the message like hi, I am from interface, that is a default method. Now this is how this particular default method will work. Next step that we can do is, let's try to add one static method as well, and after that we will see what is the difference between these default and static methods. So to add the static method, we have to just use one keyword, that is static, and then we have to use again any return type void, and let me just give this name as print static or print using static. So I'm just trying to give these simple names to this print using static. And again we can't give the semicolon at the end, because as this is a static method, we must have to provide body to this method. So let me give this body, and let me just copy this same message, and let me just change one small keyword over here, that is static. So hi, I am from interface, static method. Now again the next question is how to use these print using static method inside a student IMPL. Now over here we have to understand one more thing like about this static. So static, whenever we use static like in a class or in any other place, static, whenever we use static keyword, this particular method or variable will become a common to entire childs or entire objects, right? Because this is the property of static. Static will create only one copy. So similarly in the interface as well, this particular print using static method is common across the application. So again we can't use this particular method using this student IMPL. So let me just try to use student IMPL dot, and over here you will not get the option like print using static. So over here if you just see, IntelliJ is not giving you the option to call this print using static method. So how we can do this? We have to just use interface name student dot, and then over here this particular method is pretty similar static method that we normally use in our classes and all. So now let me just save this. Let me just try to run this. Let's see what the message that we are going to see. So over here we are going to we are getting this message like, hi, I am from interface and static method. So we are able to call this default and static method as well. Now next step that we have to do is we have to first of all understand what is the exact difference between these default and static methods, because both of these methods looks pretty similar, but there is one slight difference between it. So whatever the default methods that we have added, we can override this method in a child class, but static method cannot be overridden. So let me quickly just tell you how we can prove this. Now over here, if I just come to this student IMPL class and let me just try to override this print method. So how we can do this? We have to just use public void, and then we have to just give the message like print, and over here let me just give the message like I am from child class, and let me just give it as default method. Now over here we have to just make sure that we are just overriding this print method. So there is one annotation that is @override. This annotation is really very useful. So if I just copy this @override and if I just paste it over here, it will just make sure that print method is present in parent as well. So whenever we use override, this particular annotation will make sure that print method is present in a student interface or parent. So for example, if I just try to do one thing now, if I just try to comment out this particular print method from the interface, now if I just go to this student IMPL, you will see one error message on this @override, and what the error message is saying, like it, you can just read out the description, but let me just tell you in a quick layman language. So it is particularly telling that this print method is not present in your parent. So it is indirectly telling you that you are not overriding this print method. So you have to just remove this @override. So in such a cases, this @override annotation is really very useful. But let me just keep it as it is, and then let me just remove the comment as well. Now everything seems pretty fine, right? And we are overriding this print method. Now let me just go to this runner class, and over here we are just overriding the print, we are just calling this print method. So on this particular line we should get the overridden message. So let me now run this code. Let's see what happens on the console. So now over here, if you see this second message, it is telling you that, hi, I am from child class and it is default method. So we are just successfully overriding this default method. Now again, let's try to override this static method, but in this case we will not be able to override this static method. So let me just again come to my student IMPL, and let me just add public and void, and let me just copy this name, that is print student print using static, and let me just try to give this body, and now let me just give the message like, hi, I am from child class static method, like this. Now you might ask me question like, why I'm not getting error over here? Because as of now this print using static method is Java is considering this method as student IMPL's own method. It is not considering it as overridden method. So to do this, let me just try to use this @override on this method. Now as soon as I added this @override annotation, it gave me the error. So again, error is saying like, you cannot override this because this particular method is not present into a superclass. And why it is saying me like, because in the superclass it is called as a static method and we cannot override this static method, so we can't do this. So let me just remove this particular code. Now again there is one small difference. I'm just repeating this difference. In default method, if you want, you can override, but static method we cannot override. Again there will be everything same, but default method can be overridden, static method cannot be overridden. And again, to call the default method we can use child class object, but to call the static methods we must have to use the interface name that we normally do in our classes to use the static methods. So this is how we can use these default and static methods. Now till now we have seen that how we can add these default and static methods and how we can call and use this default and static method as well. Now there is next question, which is most important question, is what is the importance of this particular feature? Why this particular feature is added in a Java 8? Why we need this particular feature? So to understand this, we have to create one scenario. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this remove everything from the main method as of now. If needed we can just add it later, but I'm going to remove every single thing from this main method as of now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this particular student IMPL as well, these particular things from student IMPL as well. I'm just going to make it as empty, and I'm going to remove every single thing from interface as well. So now we have every single thing in a very fresh state. Now inside a student interface, let me just try to add one abstract method. Let's say void print 1. Let me just add one more method. Let's say void print 2. I'm just giving this name as name so that I can just remember it very easily, and void print 3. So I'm just adding 3 methods in an interface. Now again we started to get the error inside student IMPL. So let me just implement these methods in a student IMPL. So I'm not going to add any body as of now, because I'm not going to focus on the body and everything right now. So we have already overridden these methods. Let me just save these. Now again let me add one more class like student IMPL, which will implement this interface. So let me just add, let's say teacher IMPL like this. So let me just add teacher IMPL, and this teacher IMPL is going to again implement the student interface. Again the teacher IMPL started to get the error, so reason is we have to again implement these methods. So let me just click on implement method, and let me just override these 3 methods. Again let me add one more class, let's say college IMPL, and again college IMPL will implement student, and again we started to get the error because we have to implement these methods like this. So now our parent is student interface, and we have 3 childs, that is student IMPL, teacher IMPL, and college IMPL. So now if you are familiar with working on some of the big projects, so there will be in big projects there will be one parent and there will be hell lot of child classes, right? So there will be hundreds or thousands of even child classes. So now let's say if you are working on one of these kind of projects where there is one interface and there are hundreds or thousands of child classes which are implementing to that interface, and let's say there is one requirement, if you get any requirement here where you would like to add any single method into this student interface. So let me just try to add one method, that is print 4. So this is the requirement that I got, that is print 4, to add the method print 4 inside the student interface. Now as soon as I add this print 4 method in the student interface, all of my IMPL classes, that is student IMPL, teacher IMPL, and college IMPL started to get the error. So the reason is, as this method is added in an interface, student IMPL, teacher IMPL, and college IMPL, all these classes must have to implement these methods in order to compile this class successfully, right? So this is the reason this particular feature is really very important, because let's say if you are working on very big project where there are thousands of child classes, so implementing method in all those child classes will not be possible in such a cases. So in such a cases, what we can just do is, we can, instead of adding this abstract method, we can add a default method. We can provide some default body to it, whichever class want. Like let's say if I just want to override in a student IMPL or teacher IMPL or college IMPL, whichever class want, we can override this default method in that class. But with the help of these default methods, we can avoid these particular errors. Otherwise, let's say if we have 1000 classes, so unless and until we provide or implement this print4 method in such a 1000 classes, the code will not compile, you will not be able to run your project. So that will be a big headache. So instead of doing this, what we can just do is, we can just make this method as default method, and we can just provide some default body to it. Let's say any default body, and again, after adding this default method, you will not get any error into these student IMPL, teacher IMPL and college IMPL. All the errors are removed. If any of the classes, any of the IMPL classes wants to override this particular body, then that class can override. Otherwise, we can keep this default implementation itself. So how to override, I have already shown you. The way is same in this case as well. But with the help of this default method, we can avoid very big errors that we normally get. So with the help of default methods, we can just give the default implementation, whichever class wants, then that particular class can override this print4 method. So that's the reason these default and static methods are really very useful throughout this particular project implementation or project development process. Now I have answered the two questions. Now lastly, there is one third most important question is, now let's say if we can add body to a method inside interface, then what is the exact difference between interface and abstract class? So again, let me just quickly tell you the difference. There is a small difference, but let me just quickly tell you one more information. Like even if this particular feature is added, even if we can add method body in an interface, but their basic uses, like the basic uses of interface and basic uses of abstract class remains same. So even if this particular feature is added, but there is a specific use where you will have to use the interface, and there is specific use where you have to use the abstract classes. So let me just quickly tell you what are those scenarios where you should use interface and where you should the abstract class. So let's say if you have some set of rules, and if you want to force your child classes to follow those set of rules, then in such a cases you have to go with the interface. For example, let's say if you are going to buy a car, so while going to buy a car, we have some set of rules in our mind, like we have some budget, like we have some car specific, like car should be on petrol car, then car should have the sunroof, car should have XYZ engine. So we have some requirements in our mind, right? So these are the set of rules that we are forcing on a different companies. Like we are just telling that whichever car I will buy, it should have these particular functionalities. So whichever car I will buy, it should have at least sunroof, it should have at least good engine, it should have at least power windows. So these are the set of rules. So over here, if you see in this example, I have some set of rules like print1, print2 and print3. What I'm trying to tell over here, whichever class will implement to this interface must have to provide a body. So must have to provide body to this print1, print2 and print3 methods. So what I'm trying to say over here, whichever class will implement to my interface, these particular classes must have to follow at least these particular rules. Like they should follow at least print1, print2 and print3. So this is the requirement. So this is the case where you should go with the interfaces, where you have some set of rules, and you want that your child classes must have to follow the set of rules. So in such a cases, you will go with the interfaces. Now the next case is where you should go with the abstract classes. Now let's say again there is a parent and child relationship. If you want to create one parent class, but you don't want to allow to create object of a parent class, then you can just create the abstract class. So what I'm trying to say over here, so let's say Again, I'm just telling you with the help of one example. So let me just close all these tabs and let me just add one abstract class over here. So let me just give the name as, let's say a demo, and we can just mark this class as an abstract class. So right now let me keep it as it is, and let me just create one more class, that is demo impl, and let me just try to extend this with the demo. Now over here, if I just add main method, and if I just try to create the object of my demo class, so demo d is equals to new demo. So we can do this pretty easily, right? Because demo class is a normal class and we can create object of this particular normal class. But if you want to avoid this particular scenario, if you don't want to allow your any of the child class to create object of parent class, so in such a cases you can just mark this class as a abstract class. Now as soon as we added this abstract keyword over here, you will start to get the error like you cannot create object of this demo class because demo class is an abstract class. So in such cases where you don't want to allow your child classes to create object of your parent class, then in such a cases you should go with the abstract classes. Again, these two concepts are not up to this much only. If you want to get some extra information, you can just check out my these particular courses that I will provide in the description box and in this right hand side corner as well. This will tell you entire information about the interface and about the abstract class as well. So I hope you got an idea around this, like how we can use these default and static methods in a Java interface. This particular feature is added in a Java 1.8 version. So make sure that you are using the Java 1.8 only. If you still have any questions, let me know into a comment section. I will try my best to help you out in that case. And I hope you enjoyed this session. I'll see you in the next session.